Militarism is the curse over any other curse of the Western world at the moment. We are militarizing ourselves to death, and we don't have to. So think constructively. What are we for? And I'm happy to be here for a reason, and that is that Yugoslavia, which doesn't exist anymore. I was born in Denmark, lived most of my time in Sweden, and Yugoslavia is a place I was partly educated in from 1974 at the Inter-University Center in Dubrovnik, where at the time when Johan Galtung was the director of that center. And also because Macedonia was a place that suffered tremendously because of Western politics here. For two reasons. The sanctions against Serbia took away the major market for the country. Nobody paid it any compensation for that at the time. And secondly, because 800,000 refugees from NATO's bombing of Kosovo and Serbia ran down here. Also, nobody helped you with that. So I'm very happy to be here, and let me rush on to what I am supposed to say. First of all, the word multipolar. I kind of think that a pole is the thing you dig down in the soil and it stands there solidly and unmovably like a Greek temple or something like that. I'm fascinated by Chas Freeman's idea that we call it nodes, N-O-D-E, node instead, or something more flexible, something more interactive, something more dynamic than poles, which sounds like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 poles, and that's the world. I think we are more intertwined than that. What we're moving into is a networking world with some nodes. What we are moving out of is unilateralism, or the unipolar world, which has always been for simple-minded people. Whereas multipolar or multinodal world is a little bit more for complex thinkers. So the Americans, of course, prefer unipolar world, but that is too simple for a world that does no longer accept that kind of thinking. And of course, the United States is on its way down. It's just a matter of how fast it will go. And there will be ample opportunities for a better world when the US empire has gone, provided it does not go down by means of nuclear war. That's what we don't know. Third point of departure, let me quote Bernard Shaw, who said, and that applies, I think, unfortunately perhaps also to scholars, most people look at the world as it is and ask why. And then they do all the analysis of what is wrong in the world. He didn't say that, I said that. What we should do is to look at the world as it could be and ask ourselves, why not? And that is what peace research is about, in distinction from political science or international relations, etc. We are sick and tired of just analyzing what is wrong. Without a vision, there will be no future. Without discussing how to solve problems and what it is we're heading towards, we won't succeed, in my view, and therefore it's a damn duty of an intellectual to say something about what the future could look like. As the queen of peace research, Elise Boulding, always said, you won't get people to work for something if they cannot imagine it. Imagination is a very important thing. So let me rush on to the first word, democracy. In the West, we can vote, but we cannot select. We can vote for people who some people in parties have put on a list where you can say, I'd vote for this rather than that person. And that is done by maximum 1 to 2% of the people of the West who are permanent working members of political parties. I'm not talking about those who go and vote every 4th year. I'm talking about those who are active in parties. It's one of the smallest movements in the Western world. That's those who are members of a party. And we have the guts to call China a dictatorship with a main party that's not the only one, as you know, which has 90+ million members. That is 7% of people over 18 in China. And these people are not like those in the West who are members of parties. They are well educated. They have to pass an exam to become a member of a party. And they're committed to the development of the country, whereas in the West you can be a member of a party, 3 different parties in a week, just if you pay, $20 or something like that for an annual subscription to the party. You don't have to do anything. Lots of the Western democracy is now being destroyed by the West itself, because some of the preconditions is free speech, free media, etc., and we all know, those of us who are in this business, that it doesn't exist anymore, or is being circumscribed very, very much. On a different level, democracy has always been lacking behind in the sense that we have no global democracy, but we have a globalized, or whatever you call it, globally tending economy, investments, trade, etc., and we have a globally thinking finance world, and we have a globally thinking military world. But democracy is still limited to each nation state. I can vote for who is in the Parliament of Stockholm or Denmark in Copenhagen. I cannot vote for anybody else. That is, of course, meant to be like that because we have actually no direct influence of who is running the international system. So what we need is global governance in a democratic way, and we've got to think about ideas and proposals on how to do that. Because at the moment we don't have it. I'm coming up with some suggestions to it in a little while. Because unless we have a much more democratic global decision-making or global governance, not global government, I don't see how we're going to run this world with all its billions of people and problems and challenges that we are facing in the future. But we're always talking about democracy in a national framework. No matter how much countries have destroyed the UN, we still have the normative power, the soft power, if you will, of the Charter. And there's no reason why we can't have a discussion about how to reform the UN until somebody comes up with something better. I'm very tired of people, also good-hearted people, who say, oh, the United Nations is ridiculous. Look at Srebrenica and look at this and that, and it's marginalized and it's without values. No wonder it is when the world spends 300 to 400 times more on arms than on the United Nations, all it does. Is that the priorities we want in the future? Are these the priorities that will create a better world? Of course not. But we need a reform because the UN, as it is today, of course, is slightly outdated. But it is the best foundation for building something better. And by that I mean particularly the preamble and Article 1, which all nations and all countries basically ignore 24/7, that peace shall be established by peaceful means. And that the only right we have to use military is Article 51, the right to self-defense. We are far away from it, and we need to use the normative power of the Charter to hold countries and peoples and the priesthood of militarism accountable for the destruction of international law and the norms we already have established. That is time to remind ourselves about that.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹饪。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧。